Chaos Control has vast untapped potential in GOAT format and is better positioned against the meta than it has ever been in GOAT format's history. So today, we are going to break the meta together and assemble a Chaos Control deck that can beat every deck at GOAT format Worlds. Let's go. First, we need to start with a big mentality shift by adding our core Thunder Dragon Chaos cards to the deck first. You see, what happened is that so many of the people who use Chaos Control today had started out playing GOAT Control, which is a notoriously difficult deck to play. So they took their GOAT Control deck and threw in some Chaos Sorcerers and Thunder Dragons for easier card advantage. Do that and you are just going to end up with a worse GOAT Control deck. That is why we saw Chaos Control underperform so much in 2022. So we are not going to start off on the wrong foot by building a GOAT Control deck with a Chaos engine. We are building a Chaos deck with a Scapegoat engine. So next, let's add 3 Gravekeeper Spy. You'll know from our recent Gravekeeper Spy video that this monster is insanely good in GOAT format and especially strong in a Thunder Dragon Chaos deck. We'll go ahead and fill the deck out with some staples as well. Alright, now we're cooking. And now for our GOAT engine. We definitely want 3 Metamorphosis, as it's great for getting not only Thousand Eyes Restrict, but level 5 and level 6 fusions as well. And to support Metamorphosis, we want 3 copies of Scapegoat. We're not always going to have Sinister Serpent, and Scapegoat is the next best thing. Scapegoat is also still an excellent defensive card to stop warrior monsters or an OTK from Reasoning Gate. To flip down our Thousand Eyes Restrict, we also want 2 copies of Tsukiyomi. You need to understand that Tsukiyomi is stronger today than it's ever been since the era of GOAT Control dominance. There's just so many monsters that Tsukiyomi can attack over. Zaborg, Zambira, Kaiku, Tribe, Blade Knight, etc. Of course, it's also going to pair well with our flip effect monsters, which we'll add soon. But first, we'll add 1 copy of Creature Swap. It's like a better mind control that's great against both Chaos and Warriors, but it's a little too situational to play 2 copies. Our best swap targets are Tsukiyomi, Sangan, Sinister, a GOAT token, or a flipped Magician of Faith. Speaking of Magician of Faith, it is absolutely mandatory that we play 3 copies of this card. A lot of people are just playing 2 without any thought because they see that that's what everyone else is doing. But here we have a lot more spells than the average Chaos deck, so playing 3 makes more sense. Of course, it's great with Tsukiyomi, and using Meta on our Faith for Thousand Eyes is a nice light plus dark setup. Sometimes we'll cross out our opponent's Magician of Faith, banish 2 copies from our deck, and they won't expect the final copy of Magician of Faith in our hand. Now, what about traps? Here we have an interesting decision, because both Raigeki Break and Royal Decree are great at protecting this deck's common setups, just in different ways. Raigeki Break is a great answer to Tsukiyomi, King Tiger Wangu, or a scary face-down monster, while Decree can negate our opponent's Ring of Destruction and Raigeki Break, which counter our Thousand Eyes Restrict. As it turns out, we can just play both. If we draw them both together, we'll just use the Raigeki Break to kill a monster and then flip the Decree afterwards to lock down their back rows. We'll also play Mirror Force and Ring of Destruction to protect our monsters and round out the trap lineup at 6. You'll also notice that Chaos decks have been loading up on the traps lately to better play around Trap Dushu. So Decree is a great meta call right now to take advantage of the fact that the 2 most popular decks are playing way too many traps. Now you get a sense of what our deck really looks like. We're just playing a Chaos deck with all of your normal cards, but we've got tons of tech to brutally punish the choices that are popular in the current meta. We've got the Spies for the Blade Knights, but we also have Tsukiyomi to kill Zaborg. We've got Thousand Eyes and Creature Swap to deal with the monsters, and Royal Decree to counter all of the traps. For our last spell, we're going to add 1 Book of Moon. It's definitely an underrated card and great alongside our Decree, but we only have room for 1 in the main deck. We'll also add one breaker to our monster lineup. It's not amazing in every matchup, but it's still great against aggro and burn decks. Our last 2 slots in the monster lineup are flexible, but we'll go with a Dark Mimic level 1 and a DD Warrior Lady. Dark Mimic makes our Metamorphosis and Tsukiyomi slightly better, which is always welcome. DD Warrior Lady is a light monster that we can set to bait mind control or summon to pressure our opponent's life points. The fact that it's an answer to King Tiger Wangu is also quite relevant for us. Now it's time to build our side deck. What's wonderful about this deck is that it's already well prepared for Warriors and Burn, which gives us tons of room in the side to handle all of GOAT format's other matchups. We'll start with some cards that we didn't have room for in the main deck: Mystical Space Typhoon and Torrential Tribute. MST will come in for Burn, whereas Torrential will come in for aggro. Then we want 2 Book of Moons for all of the GOAT control decks. It gets under Decree while answering Thousand Eyes Restrict, Tsukiyomi, and Azura Priest, which is exactly what we want in this matchup. We'll even side 1 copy of Azura ourselves, as it's light and great against opposing GOAT tokens. To deal with Reasoning Gate and other combo decks, let's side a Kuriboh, Cyberstein, and 2 Magic Jammers. Kuriboh is always a great surprise tactic, and Cyberstein is a menace against any sort of combo deck. Magic Jammer comes in over Decree, and it helps protect Last Warrior from another planet, which we summon off of Cyberstein. For Burn, we have 2 Mystic Walks to get rid of Ojama tokens or counter Nightmare Wheel. Lastly, we need some outs to King Tiger Wangu. Warrior decks will often be siding it, and Earth decks will definitely be siding it. Note that if you don't have an out to Wangu, you may want to activate Scapegoat in your opponent's draw phase before the Wangu comes down to buy yourself time to draw an out. To counter those Wangus, I went with Zombira the Dark, Brain Control, and Smashing Ground. Although there are other options. Zombira attacks over everything, and Brain Control can answer multiple monsters, but Smashing Ground is the least situational. The last side deck card I leave for you to figure out. Comment below and tell us what you would add as the last card. Now let's see the deck in action. I want to highlight this game here because I think it is educational. Our opponent starts off turn 1 with a Pot of Greed and a Chop Dust Shoot. We open double Thunder Dragon, but we don't panic. So he gets rid of our Sagan. We discard the Thunder Dragon. One thing that I want to point out is that our opponent doesn't have a monster. What people don't understand is that in GOAT format, like, yes, opening Pot of Greed Dust Shoot is good, but if you have no real follow-up, no way to pressure your opponent, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Now, if our opponent also had some sort of set flip effect monster, like a Magician of Faith or even a Gravekeeper Spy, that could be attacking us for 24 every turn, very, very different game. But in this case, we have our own Gravekeeper Spy, and this is actually game 2. In game 1, I didn't see a Scapegoat or Metamorphosis from our opponent, so I'm not sure if maybe this was sided in. In game 1, it just looked like a sort of standard Thunder Dragon Chaos Turbo deck. Maybe it was sided in, or maybe he just didn't draw it. And yeah, he goes Thousand Eyes, but again, no pressure, right? Well, now he's got the pressure because he has Tsukiyomi. So we're gonna need to find some sort of out. Our opponent actually has the second Trap Dust Shoot, and we're just gonna get attacked for a while. But we decide to go Goat's Meta ourselves just to out this Thousand Eyes Restrict, just to out this lock. It's not really, you know, the best play because our opponent has that, but, you know, it is what it is, right? So, yeah, he takes our Sangan and says go. Gonna go ahead and grab the Sinister. We could also grab Tsukiyomi, I guess. But that's, you know, luckily we've got another meta. But he's got the Ring. But we've got the Snatch. And now we're kind of in a tough spot because our opponent just gets to gain 1,000 life every turn. But we're just gonna tribute for Thunder Dragon, say enough of that. This is also kind of weird. I don't know, maybe this was some main deck tech that he forgot to side out, or maybe he sided it in even though it's pretty terrible against our deck. Like, it's good here, but it's bad in, like, every other situation. A little weird. Luckily, though, the Zombira doesn't get to attack us directly, which is pretty nice. And yeah, we're just gonna trade guys there. You know, we are down like 4 cards, but you know, game's not over yet. Opponent's got 9,000 to our 39. He kills our spy. He draws a card. We're taking more damage. We got our Raigeki break and a Book of Moon. We're gonna BLS the Sagan. He has the Torrential, which is like the best card for him here. And yeah, we're gonna sit Tsukiyomi just to kind of, you know, maybe bait like a Mind Control or something. But he has another Zombira, which, again, it's just weird because he just has the Zombira every time it's good. And yeah, that order is like very weird. He summoned Sork and then MST'd, and then we get to chain Book so he doesn't get an attack. That is a really big misplay for him there. Also not sure if I like Duo because our opponent knows we have Sinister. I mean, our Sinister could be set, I suppose. We can see that our opponent is sort of starting to squander his advantage. And yeah, there goes our Sinister. And now we've got a Faith, we've got a Graceful going, and we have Tsukiyomi to flip down the Faith. And now things are starting to look a bit better, eh? And we're just gonna get Graceful, you know, go plus again. We are making a comeback. You know, one thing to note here is that our opponent's at 8,000 and we are about to deck out. So we're kind of under some pressure to really make something happen, and our opponent really has a lot of resources to stop us from reaching a win condition. If you're an opponent here, you definitely want to, I think, just focus on not dying. But, you know, again, let's see what happens. You know, we got a Tsukiyomi and a Mimic going, but drawing a bunch of extra cards, maybe not helpful. Our opponent plays Blade Knight, and it's like, you'll notice here, you know, we could have stopped the Blade Knight. We could have Raigeki braked the Blade Knight, but there's not really a reason to. Again, we don't really want to draw 1,000 cards anyways, and our Sorcerer can just banish the Blade Knight for free. It's really weird because in Game 1, we didn't see any Warriors, and we also didn't see this Goats meta. In Game 1, we saw some Thunder Dragon Chaos cards. We did end up winning, but it's almost like he transition-sided into Goat Warriors or something. You notice he does still have the Chaos Sorcerer, though. This time we will hit the Blade Knight, because we kind of want to resolve our Faith, but our opponent has the cross out for it. We're just going to keep going on the offensive here. Note that this is our 3rd Magician of Faith. He answered 1, he answered a 2nd, but we have the 3rd. And the 3rd Magician of Faith has just been super good for me. So yeah, we just kind of want to put our opponent under some pressure. Our opponent does have the Scapegoat to survive though, but we've still got a pretty good board. You know, we're going to negate the traps. Here, he kind of has an interesting decision. He wants to attack over the Sorcerer, obviously, but then it's a question of, do you attack over the Ryo Senshi or the Magician of Faith? Here he decides to attack over the Magician of Faith. We get back cross out as kind of a mind game, because what we actually want is for our opponent to not Tsukiyomi the BLS, so we get back cross out for that reason. Depending on how this goes, we might be able to creature swap, take the BLS, and possibly attack for game. So yeah, you'll notice there he jar graded our draw phase, so we couldn't negate it with Ryo Senshi. Here our opponent is expecting cross out, but we actually just have the creature swap. So yeah, we creature swap, and this ring here is going to be really clutch. Note that our opponent did upstart us twice. So without the upstarts, we would be at 22 instead of 42, and then we can't rig the BLS for game. Here, that is what we're going to be trying to do. You know, in this case, we don't even really need the ring, but yeah. And I wanted to highlight this funny game here just to show you all of the crazy stuff that a Chaos Control deck can do against Reasoning Gate. We are off to a pretty normal start. Our opponent summons some goats, we attack one, we discard our Thunder Dragon, we set our back rows, and we say go. Now our opponent is going to Monster Gate, which is fine. It flips into a Fusler. We kill the Fusler. We don't really have a reason not to. And it's back to us. Now you'll see things are gonna get pretty crazy because we've got double metamorphoses. So we get Bolter, we get Chaos Sorcerer, and we get Ojama King, locking our opponent out of the zones. Our opponent tries to use Call the Haunted, but Ojama King is a continuous effect, so you actually can't chain to it here. The call goes back face down, and we pass turn. However, you know, what you'll notice is that we made a mistake by putting our Bolter in attack the previous turn, because our opponent could have turned a Goat to attack mode and rammed into Bolter in order to unlock himself from this Ojama King. We make up for that on the following turn by turning our Bolter to defense, and we kind of just say draw go for a while. We're gonna let the upstart resolve, but not the graceful, because, you know, we like life points. And we've got the Decree, of course, to lock out whatever trap he plays. He plays the Jar, we Decree. And yeah, we're just going to wait and wait until we can clean it up here. Now we've got the Magician of Faith. So now things get pretty crazy, because we have this Chaos Sorcerer in our hand, so we can just summon a second Ojama King here. So we Heavy Storm, go on the offensive, clear the board, summon the Chaos Sorcerer, attack all the Goat tokens, hit for 23, and we drop the Metamorphosis for the second Ojama King, and our opponent just concedes, because we had the second Decree, so we had him locked out of traps, Balter had him locked out of spells, and then two Ojama Kings had him locked out of monsters. I love that game. But before you get all excited and take Chaos Control to your next tournament, you need to watch this video here, where we go over the major weaknesses of this archetype.